bless you, sir.
Well, the other half is sitting upstairs.
My wife is a saint of saints. The saint of saints.
What time
The
is it there,
saint of
Rob?
saints.
10?
Goddess of goddess.
Because you guys in Indiana have like 4 different time zones, right?
Yeah, we have 2. Yeah, we have part of the state's central and part of it's eastern.
God bless you, sir. God bless you, sir.
Okay, we're starting in 1 minute, guys, and we are live on the stream, so.
God bless you, sir.
Gary, you look like you've just been sitting there for the last 48 hours.
I turned the lights off in the back here since I'm in the RV and it's my kitchen. If I move a little bit and left the door open, that's still a crapper. So I'm pretty sure people don't want to see all that mayhem there.
Okay, you guys ready? Somebody said, "Oh my God, she grew up in Newport." I want to welcome. Okay, you guys ready, guys? Everybody ready? Glenn Miller, you're in. Glenn, get him his tea. Get him his tea. I want to welcome everybody to the world according to Ben Stein. I want to thank everybody that's listening to us on our live stream on YouTube at the world according to Ben Stein. And I want to thank everybody, please, and remind everybody to please go to the iTunes store and follow us at the world according to Ben Stein. We are joined tonight by 2 special guests. First, Indiana radio talk show host. I believe it's 93.1. Rob, am I correct? Rob Kendall from Mock and Rob. And sorry, Rob?
So I was going to say, Ben gets better looking every time I'm with him.
You're very
and,
it's all because of you. I'm not going to make fun of myself, but thank you very much.
And I want to welcome you back, Rob. You are a great radio show host, and welcome back. And of course, we have welcome back again to Gary Collins at Simple Life Now on Parler. He's an author. He's a podcaster. He served this country for over 20 years. Welcome back, Gary.
Thanks. It seems like we were just here a couple days ago, right?
You know, we were. Think about all that's happened in the last 48 hours. And of course, this show wouldn't be complete without actor, provocateur, writer, America's humble servant, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. And
why do you never mention I'm a lawyer and an economist?
Well, because, okay, lawyer, economist, Yale graduate who graduated valedictorian of his year in college, worked for the
law school, not college.
Law school, worked for the Federal Trade Commission, worked at a shoe store for a week.
Yep.
And quite a few other jobs. And so welcome, Ben. And again, I want to welcome everybody listening, but we got to get right to the news and right to the top of the story. We are going to do a few different segments tonight, a few fun, a few on the serious side. But obviously, Mr. Stein, what is going on in Washington, it feels like a setup to me. I was speaking to a friend of mine who's not on one side of the aisle or the other, and they were saying for a year we've had to basically suffer through BLM riots, Antifa riots, looting, all of this stuff. And yesterday, people stormed the Capitol, and that's the narrative that we're getting right now.
Well, something's strange here because generally speaking, Republicans don't riot. I mean, I'm sure there have been cases where they have, but generally speaking, Republicans don't riot. To me, this looks possibly, and I'm only saying possibly, just possibly, like what I think is called false flag. And I question whether Antifa or some other violent group mixed themselves in with the people who are demonstrating. I question that. I question why the Capitol Police let them in and let them just walk around the corridors of the Capitol and the Senate and House office buildings. I mean, that should never in a million years have happened, no matter, even if these guys were nuns and priests, it shouldn't have happened. Nobody should have let these people in. Nobody should let any demonstrators in. I've been in many, many, many demonstrations in Washington. I've never been in one where the guards just stood aside and let the demonstrators walk in. So something was very seriously amiss with the Capitol Police. And when you let children loose in a candy store, they will tend to take some candy. What happened was just disgraceful and horrible. But what I keep thinking is a Capitol Police person shot and killed one of the demonstrators. If that had happened and the demonstrators had been Black Lives Matter, the press would be screaming the house down about the Capitol Police. And somehow that is not happening. Obviously, clearly, what happened should not have happened. Nobody should be roaming around the Capitol what should I say, free to do whatever mischief he or she wants to do. That absolutely should not happen. The people who committed mischief, who made messes, who sullied those sacred halls, they should be ashamed of themselves and they should be prosecuted. But was it really Trump supporters? Who was mixed in with it? I'd be very curious to know, and I'd be very curious to know how you explain the fact that the Capitol Police just basically sent out an invitation saying, do whatever mischief you want.
What say you, Gary, who's served in many different forms of service of protection for our country? What are your thoughts on this?
I don't know. It was weird because I was on the road all day yesterday, and I did not pay attention. I wasn't listening to any news, nothing, no current events. And by the time I got home, we'd started texting. It had all been broke loose and it happened. But when I heard it, the first thing I thought too was black mix in. That's first thing I thought, because historically we have not seen this, right? And I'm not on either side in a way. I'm not Switzerland, but I look at both sides equally as far as judgmental. And and I have one thing I will tell everyone. If you show up to any demonstration with a knife, a gun, and you burn things down and you threaten people's lives, no matter what CNN prints or puts on their channel, it's not peaceful. I don't care. And you need to realize that. I want to see how this all shakes out. But if that was part of, the MAGA or right, who knows anymore? I just don't understand how a violent protest accomplishes anything. And I'm a person, after serving in the military and law enforcement, you want to just completely and utterly piss me off and tune me out, do that. I will not support it on any side, from any person, color, religion. I don't care. Dogs, cats, don't care. You go that route, you're out with me. You're done. I respect you zero. So I don't know. I don't know what to think anymore. The news is going at light speed.
And I want to say something for the record. We didn't witness any violence by the Trump supporters other than storming in. That's the only, if you want to call that violence, comparatively speaking to the looting we've witnessed, to the tearing down of New York City, it doesn't even rate what they did comparatively in the last year.
I was lumping all groups in.
Yeah. What say you?
I was
Robert?
saying if you do any of that, anything. Yeah.
No, 100%. Yeah. If you come to 100%, Rob, what do you say?
So what we talked about today was how different the narrative is, right? When May and June, when the riots happened, it was, you can't lump everybody in together. Most of these people are peaceful. If you can't let a few bad apples just be lumped in with everybody, you got to listen to these people. You got to understand what they have to say. They have valid things they want to see changed. And yet here it's like every Trump supporter is an awful terrorist who tried to storm the Capitol. Nobody wants to hear what these people have to say. And it really shouldn't surprise anyone that if people are locked down for 10 months, they lose their jobs, they lose their businesses, you're threatening to put them in jail for all sorts of stuff, that they're going to be feeling some despair and some people might lash out. So it's the difference, it's the hypocrisy in the narrative on this. That's something that happened just a couple of months ago, the things we were supposed to do and how it's supposed to be covered versus this now.
I think Judah has nailed it, actually, which is, you would think from reading the headlines in the major newspapers today or seeing the leading stories on the network news, which I almost never do, but you would think that these people had started fires, had poured gasoline all around, had just opened fire with shotguns, had thrown Molotov cocktails, had thrown hand grenades. No, they didn't. The shooting was done, the killing was done by the Capitol Police. As far as I know, the so-called rioters didn't do anything violent, although some apparently were apprehended with weapons in their possession, which is very, very bad, and they should be punished severely for it. absolutely, without question.
If that's true.
But there's nothing like what was going on with the demonstrations earlier this year when buildings were set on fire, when whole blocks of cities were set on fire. It's not even remotely to be compared with it, but the media would make you think it was worse.
And I also want to bring up just another quick point on this is that today, actually, I think the U.S. acting U.S. Attorney General, I think his name is Sherwin, intimated that he might bring charges against the president for inciting this. And I want to know, what can he possibly have done, guys? This is and this is what we have to look forward to as Trump supporters, and what the president, his family, and everybody associated with the president has to look forward to for God knows how long.
Well, I think more important than that is that we now see how Washington works. And that is, once the media mob and the Washington power players get the scent of something bloody, they will follow that scent no matter what, even if there turns out not to be a scent there, even if it turns to be a phony scent, even if it turns out to be a prop scent from a props department, they will follow that scent, and they will cast out of their house forever anybody who doesn't follow along with them. This is how mobs get founded. This is how the Washington swamp mob gets founded. And as Mr. Kendall was just saying, people are sick of being locked out of that and having the Washington swamp mob running everything. But again, for the millionth time, no violence allowed, no bringing guns or weapons or knives into the Capitol. That's out, absolutely out. And people who do it should be severely punished. People who incite others to do it should be severely punished.
But again, we have no proof yet.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
So the video of the woman who was shot and killed, think about how much different that's being covered than what we saw this summer as well. That video is disturbing, right? I mean, when the thing happened in Wisconsin, Joe Biden comes out and says you should shoot him in the leg. And these BLMs on basketball courts and NFL are putting people's names on their helmets. Is this woman's name going to be on a basketball court? Is Joe Biden going to come out and condemn the Capitol Police? Again, it's the total hypocrisy on how people are handling it. Either we have to have the same rules, right? And they're not even close.
Gary, I see you wanting to chime in.
Oh no, I couldn't agree more. And I don't have a dog in the fight. You know, I feel terrible, but I've said I didn't vote the last two elections because I refused to vote for candidates that I don't respect or do not want to vote for anymore. I drew my line in the sand. I said no more. I'm going to.
But I think there's something bigger going on here than that.
Oh, I agree.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, Gary. I apologize.
Oh no, Ben, I totally agree. But for me, I have never seen anything during my lifetime that a president attacked mercilessly time and time and time again. I just have never seen anything like it. I don't care what side you're on.
Yeah, I saw it with Nixon, but I think that what they're doing now with Trump is even worse than what was done with Nixon. I mean, the fact is, you cannot find in the documents of the last 48 hours anything by Mr. Trump encouraging people to be violent, encouraging people to do anything harmful to other people. He said, we encourage you to protest. He didn't say we encourage you to spit on Nancy Pelosi's desk. And by the way, Nancy Pelosi is not a goddess. She's a person. She's a person. She's subject to criticism like everyone else. We don't, for God's sake, we don't want violence in the Capitol. We don't want violence anywhere. But let's not act as if this were some kind of wild insurrection starting a civil war. It's not. It is not at all. The only real violence that occurred, as far as we know so far, and it could change totally, was the Capitol Police individual killing a demonstrator. That's the violence, and that's bad enough. That's plenty bad enough. But let's be serious. I mean, Trump was not walking around passing out Molotov cocktails. I mean, he's not a perfect being by a long, long way, but he was not walking around passing out Molotov cocktails.
And Judah, if I could kind of piggyback on top of that, think about what the Trump supporter has been through for the past 4 years, right? Trump was a guy who was elected because he spoke to a group of people that put him over the finish line, millions of people who didn't feel they had been known or noticed or paid attention to or cared about by their government probably all the way back to Reagan, maybe even longer, I don't know. Those people finally get somebody in. To his credit, he at least tried to do the vast majority of the things he campaigned on, which is very rare. And for 4 years, the left and the never Trumpers and the establishment and the deep state tried to take this guy down and steal their vote. And now they see it happening in the actual vote itself, and they're trying to get their voice heard, and very few people will even listen to them.
And on that
Including
note,
the
if you
courts
just-
won't even listen to them. But it's but again, let's go back. If you're going to, some imbecile in the Congress said that he thought that Trump should be charged with treason. Well, the Constitution makes clear what treason is. There's only one thing treason can be: aid and comfort to the enemy in time of war. Clearly, nobody was committing treason yesterday. Was there violence? Yes, but it's not clear on where the violence came from. The media is making this into a cause which will allow them and their friends to go after Republicans and conservatives forever. And this is just another example of how the real coup d'etat was not yesterday's demonstration or recent demonstrations. It was what the media has been doing for the last couple of years.
And if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. I want to thank everybody that's listening on YouTube at The World According to Ben Stein. Please remember to like us on iTunes, Stitcher, all the great services. And of course, on Parler at Ben Stein. We're joined tonight by special guest Gary Collins, better than the other Gary Collins from Simple Life Now, and Rob Kendall, radio talk show host in Indiana. Tell people your call letters, Rob.
93.1 WIBC, the former radio home of Mike Pence.
And you can live stream his show. And I want to welcome everybody back. I really want to thank everybody that's listening in the live stream. We will be I'm reading your comments. And but Rob brought up a great point, about what Trump has been going through the last 4 years. But there's something even deeper going on. It's with the president getting banned. Listen, I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on most social media apps. I decided not to, but Trump is being banned essentially from all media apps. And if the president of the United States could get banned from the social media giants who run this country, what's to stop them next from coming after us little folk? Absolutely
Absolutely
and
nothing.
it's frightening.
They're already
very
doing it.
frightening.
They're already doing it.
Yeah.
I know a bunch of people have been deplatformed. I know a guy who got deplatformed for talking about losing weight. So
Wow. Wow.
If you don't agree with them, that's the problem I have. As you know, I consider myself a libertarian, but I use that term loosely because they say little L and big L. I say my L stands for I'll leave at any time. So, when I look at it, people are pissed off and they're frustrated. And, I was listening to a really good podcast today of a statistician who talked about that him and his group, they broke down for COVID, that many more people will die from the actual administration of, locking people up or down, not letting people go about their business. And what we're seeing, it's scary in the sense because a guy like me who's grew up reading 1984 and Ayn Rand and all this, and I reread them all again. I've reread them several times over my life, and I go, these books were written a long time ago, yet it's almost like they're writing our current situation.
Especially in 1984.
Especially
I mean, Mr. Orwell really nailed it unbelievably when he said, who controls the present controls the past, who controls the past controls the future. And we see that happening right now. Wifey and I were watching the TV news tonight just before I came on, and it is so clear that they're already trying to set up a narrative which says this was President Trump orchestrating an attempted coup d'etat against the government of the United States. There was no sign of that whatsoever, absolutely none. There was some very, very petty vandalism, but there was no sign of a coup d'etat. Clearly, what happened should not have happened. Clearly, any violence is bad in this context. Clearly, any of the people who do it should be prosecuted. But also, clearly, this was not an attempted coup d'etat. There was a successful coup d'etat by the media in the last election. That was the successful coup d'etat.
And I want to bring up something before you guys get. Sorry, Rob. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think a great fantasy camp would be where people pay to watch the news with Ben Stein and hear him comment on it in real time. I think that'd be wonderful.
Well, you're very kind.
That actually would make a great show. They have like videos like that where you watch people's reactions to things. But one of the things I wanted to bring up, though, what you brought up before is, yesterday, we've been, I want to say the word gaslit by the likes of Hannity, Laura Ingraham, that top shelf Fox News for the better part of 3 years. And no offense, Ben, to the guy I know you like, by people promising indictments, by promising things were going to happen. And then yesterday we basically had 6 senators come out and say they weren't going to vote for the certification. People like Lindsey Graham, people like Tom Cotton, people, they think somehow that because they yesterday decided to say that they're not going to be lumped in. And to Trump supporters that are there all across America to watch these senators, these so-called Republican senators, do nothing, Ben, is absolutely maddening.
It is maddening, but if I may use a word that I absolutely loathe, that there is a bit of conflating here that is, I think, inappropriate. Yes, I'm a bit disappointed in Lindsey Graham. I've been a substantial contributor to his campaigns by my modest standards, and so I love him a lot. He represents my son in South Carolina and my granddaughter, so I love him. I love him a lot. I wish him well. But there's no doubt he has not lived up to his promises by quite a considerable amount. But that has nothing to do with what happened in the Capitol yesterday.
No,
he didn't incite anything. He didn't urge people to go around putting their feet up on sacred Nancy Pelosi's sacred desk.
No, but Ben, the point I'm
there.
Ben, the point I'm trying to bring up is that the people, when they feel hopeless and they feel like they've been let down by everybody, they're angry.
They're angry, but again, I think there's some false conflating, again, to use a word I don't like, conflating going on here, because if you look at it, yes, bad things happened yesterday, but it wasn't like the storming of the Bastille. It wasn't like people were lined up and shot like they were in the Bolshevik uprising. There was vandalism. Yes, absolutely, there was vandalism. But it's nothing compared to a real coup d'etat or a real attempt at a seizure of power. Nobody was killed except for one person killed by a Capitol Police person. I mean, one is too many. Any is too many. But the idea that the media is telling us, putting across us, that there was an attempted coup d'etat is just nonsense.
Jude, can I chime in for just a second?
Yeah, please.
I interviewed Trump in 2016. It was on the Indiana primary, is the primary that he clinched the Republican nomination for, and got to spend quite a bit of time with him, and it was really a life-altering experience for me. It really helped get me my job that I have now, and I got the feeling at the time, and it's really played out, that he was a brilliant guy who always believed he could work with anyone. And I think that's maybe one of the great undoings of Trump, was he always believed that there was some sort of shared interest when he was trying to negotiate with the Democrats or the Never Trumpers, and that these are people in the business world. We have a shared interest. You want to get as much for you as you can. I want to get as much for me, but we have a shared interest to get a deal done. And I think he's still in shock at just how much some of these people hate him, that they are willing to torpedo this country. And I think he probably is walking away a little bit surprised at how much some people are willing to completely destroy the country.
Gary, let me ask you a question. As you were driving yesterday, how happy and peaceful were you to not be hearing any of this news? And then you get a text from me going, whatever I text you about, all breaking loose. And you're like, because Gary writes about going off the grid and stuff and the simple life. And it went from driving to seeing this on the news.
Yeah, like I said, it was surprising because I knew the demonstration was going on. I knew that because we had talked about it on Tuesday. But I want to say a couple things and I have to turn this stuff off. Even today, I did not watch very much. I just said, what's happened. I don't need to get wrapped around the axle on it. Change the things you can change, ignore the rest, and move on and do the things. I try and lead by example by living the best life I can. That's how I lead. Other people run for office, but we got to remember we have people in Congress who think you can tip an island over. That's what we're dealing with. And
now that must be some kind of reference that I don't get.
oh, Ben, if you guys know of it, I'll try and there's a clip of, I can't remember the congressman who asked a Navy admiral during I can't remember if it was a hearing or just kind of what it was over. And he goes, I'm afraid if too many people go on the island, that the island will capsize. And everyone, even the admiral went, what? Dan Bongino replayed it.
I vaguely remember this, by the way. Yeah.
And everyone at first thought the guy was joking, but there was no word of a joke ever mentioned, period. Everyone believes the guy was dead serious. And he is known as the stupidest congressman to ever be in Congress. That's kind of his
Wait a minute. That is a pretty tall boast. Who is this?
It's on film.
Who is this person?
No, he means Gary, that to say, because there's a lot of them.
This one will leave you speechless, Ben. You'll walk away going, we're doomed.
You know what's amazing? There's like so many you could pick out of a hat who it could have been. That's what Ben is trying to say, is that there's at least 50 at least 50 of them that we could think of. Rob, I see you wanting to chime in.
Well, I just wanted to piggyback on this. The problem, well, there's so many problems, but the one of the major things is this crap worked yesterday. I think about this moron that represents me here in Indiana, Mike Braun, who has flip-flopped numerous times his first year in office. He's only there because Trump came in and saved him and got him elected when he was running against Joe Donnelly. And one moment, well, I'm not gonna vote to challenge this. Then when it was politically expedient, he's all over it. And within an hour, then all of a sudden, well, no, I'm not gonna do it now because of what happened today. Wait, either voting irregularities that need to be investigated happened or they didn't. And these politicians who are swayed and bought so easily are at the crux of what's going on here. And it's horrific.
But that's actually a great point, Ben. And I want to bring this up to all of you guys, is this: for 4.5 years, Trump has, as I've used this, said he's had a proctologist, he's had a camera up his ass for the last 4 years and for, in public. And he's been investigated for 4.5 years. He's been under every single thing imaginable. And we still, and that was the most maddening thing about this election, that nobody will ever be able to say that we couldn't investigate. And that's what Trump supporters, and that's what people should be absolutely livid about. And that narrative that we should shut up is just maddening, Ben.
Well, I see, here we get back into the Washington mob mentality. That's never going to be brought up. Now the story from now on is, who do you know? Where are you now, or have you ever been a supporter of Mr. Trump? Was anyone in your family ever a supporter of Mr. Trump? Did you ever write anything supporting Mr. Trump? Did you ever contribute to anything involving Mr. Trump? That's going to be the story now from now on, for as long as the media can play it that way. Now, we four, hidden away in a bomb shelter somewhere, we will be able to talk about it a little tiny bit till they yank our platform out from under us. But in general, the media has now decided that the narrative from now on is, you were part of a group that tried to burn down the Capitol with all the members and representatives and their children inside.
And by the way, sorry,
have a damn good explanation.
And by the way, it was Hank Johnson. That was the representative.
Okay.
And it was Guam. He believed you could tip over Guam. Thank you for the people in the live chat. And I'm sorry, Gary Collins, that you are now associated with us, Trump people. And we won't name names, Gary, but you are now part of us.
Well, and that's the thing. People who understand me and know me know I don't care. My attitude is, like I said, I look at things with a clear view as a former investigator. I look at the facts and then I make a decision. I don't let one side sway me one way or another. But when it comes to Trump, I think the biggest, I'd like to hear what Ben thinks on this as well. I kind of thought this when Trump came into office. I went, he's not prepared, and not as a leader. He wasn't prepared for what he had gotten himself into, because he didn't realize that the swamp was anywhere near as deep as it is. I worked in it. I knew it. And I went, I don't know if this guy's ready for this. They could lop off his head. And it's kind of been that because he just didn't understand that these people don't care about America for the most part. It's self-preservation, it's greed, it's power, everyone else be damned. And I just don't think he could see that. He's a business guy. He's used to working with people, making things happen. You have to build a team. That's the furthest thing of what Washington is today. If that was his biggest error, that's what I think it is.
It's very, very depressing. It's interesting. The media response. Well, first of all, the fact that the Capitol Police allowed demonstrators to roam freely through the Capitol, that was insanely depressing. The fact that the media is now painting this as a failed coup d'etat by the Republican Party is really, 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 really depressing and, of course, completely untrue. This was one of the most depressing days I have seen in a long, long time, and it really frightens me a lot. I think, as someone on TV said tonight, we've got to pull together, but I don't think we can. I think the media has now got us under the lash. The media is going to be whipping us and whipping us and whipping us until we bleed to death.
Ben, but Gary just brought up a point though, which was when, and I'll get to this to Rob too, is when the president came in, he was a businessman. And he surrounded himself by to quote Bob Seger, by surrounded by strangers he thought were his friends, and he surrounded he surrounded himself by charlatans for the most part, and he did not realize what he was getting into. And even throughout his presidency, he always assumed if you work a good deal, if you create peace in the Middle East, if the stock market goes up, if unemployment is at its all-time low, somehow that will, there'll be peace in America, that this will unify us. That was the thing that in his mind, and in many of our minds, right? In most humans' minds, sir, if things are going well, we should get along. And it was never the case with President Trump.
Right, well, because he didn't understand he was dealing with people who, as one of our panelists said a few moments ago, did not really have a shared goal. I mean, the shared goal, when people are doing a merger or an acquisition, they all want to make money. That's their common thread. This is not the goal here. The goal in politics is to rub the other person's nose in it.
Rob, what do you think?
One of the things that's going to be fascinating to me, because conservatives have been told by Republicans for years, we know what's best. You better shut up and vote for our guy or girl. You better do it the way we want to do it, and that you need us. I think conservatives are in an interesting position right now because the Republican Party cannot exist without conservatives. And this is a wonderful time if Trump chooses to be the leader of whatever movement comes out of this to say, no, we're not rolling over for establishment candidates anymore. You're not going to get us to vote for these turds out of fear, and a chance to actually stand up and push back to these guys.
And if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. I want to thank everybody in the YouTube that's listening on YouTube. Follow us on iTunes, and thank you for telling us about Representative Hank Johnson, who Gary brought up, who thinks Guam could be tipped over. That might rank as one of the dumbest things a congressperson has ever said. But I want to get to the bigger question is, where do we go from here, Ben? Where do we go from here, guys? Because like you've said, they are going to come after us. They already are. And this is very dangerous. It is a very dangerous time. Anytime. Here's the great speaker lie, sir, is I'll tell, this is my last story. The great political lie is, I want to bring everybody together.
I think where we go from here is my humble thought, and it could be totally wrong, is that we now, as conservatives, have to come out with a program for what we would like to see the country do. We would like to say to the American people, this President Biden, soon to be President Biden, has got his plan. It calls for this, and this. We don't think it'll work for reasons A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We would like to propose a different plan, which we think will work. It has reasons S, T, U, V, W. And I think we have to come out with a conservative program for America that will take care of our problems. I think we have two giant super problems right now. One, three, rather, three. One is the collapse of education, especially among African American and other non-white children in America, and the collapse of public education in general. Two, really, really serious challenges to our military defense forces, coming from Russia and China. Really, really, really serious challenges. And three, a really, really serious challenge in terms of law and order in this country. It's interesting. What we really have already in this country is a war that has already started. People are talking about a cold civil war. I think we've got a hot civil war. I have close friends in Los Angeles, a great, wonderful city, who want to move to areas that are safe. And they're living in areas that are supposed to be safe. They're not safe. They want to move to places that are safe. The prices, the rents for places that are not safe, that are safe, are absolutely astronomical. Mortgages even more so. So we have a situation now in which a large number of Americans cannot afford to live in safe areas with decent schools. I'd like to see some effort made about that. And that is exactly the opposite of what the Democrats have in mind in terms of defunding the police. We need to have a giant beefing up of the police, just like we need to have a very significant beefing up of our military and a drastic improvement in our education.
But Ben, my biggest fear, and I'll go to all you guys on this, my biggest fear, Gary, I know you had no horse in these races, and my biggest fear is that the Trump supporter is going to feel that same way. Because other than Josh Hawley and a few other senators yesterday, and many of the people in the House, actually, in the Congress, that defended the president, Ben, Trump supporters don't feel like they don't feel like they are part of the Republican Party. And I think the Republican Party's biggest mistake, like Ben Sass, the ass, thinks that they all think it's like the George Will, the Never Trumpers. They all think it's like they got married 40 years ago and they're going to call up the same people and they're going to be, this wedding reception is going to happen. No, everybody's dead from that wedding. Okay. Everybody's dead or you're no longer friends. There is no more GOP. The GOP is dead. And I know, Ben, you might disagree because that's my humble opinion, because I don't see the Trump supporters going back and I don't. Rob, you're more in touch because you speak to them every day.
Well, yeah, and we were talking a little bit about this today. And by the way, the big one they're going to come for, I mean, you can talk about Facebook, you can talk about YouTube, you can talk about Twitter. The big one they're going to come for now, with controlling the entire government and Biden as president, is the FCC. They're going to try to gut talk radio, which has always been sort of that last haven of free thought, free idea, free expression. So in my business, I mean, I'm waking up today knowing they're going to try to do something to talk radio. I think Judah makes an interesting point, which is that the Trump supporter is a very smart voter. And the Trump supporter is a smart voter from the standpoint of they were wed to ideas that Trump put forward. I knew Trump was going to win the presidency when I started going to those rallies in 2016. Nobody else believed it was going to happen at the radio station I work at. And for 4 years, I've been able to say nana, 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 because I saw a group of people at those rallies who I knew who they were. Some people the same town I grew up in, and they were Democrats. They were independents. They were people who I'd never heard talk about politics before. Those people were wed to the ideas that Donald Trump put forward, and they were not the ideas of the Republican Party. They haven't been the ideas of the Republican Party. And in many cases, they've done everything they can to destroy those ideas. So if the Republican Party thinks they have a monopoly on these voters, especially the way they're treating them now, I don't see that at all.
Well, what should we do? But I think someone, call it the Republican Party, call it something else, has to come up with a conservative program, a conservative platform. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. It used to be that when the parties ran every 4 years, they would come out with a big, thick volume or several volumes of what their plans were, quite specifically for all the different parts of the government. That doesn't happen anymore. They're just a few words about hope and change. Now we have to have a thorough platform. Maybe the media will ignore it. They probably will. but there has to be something that the ordinary conservative can grab onto and say, this works. My children are not learning anything in school. My children are afraid to walk to school. I am afraid to walk from my job to the bus stop. Here's a plan that the conservatives, call them Republicans, call them whatever you want, have to make my life bearable. I'd like to see that coming out of the conservatives in this country.
Hey, Judy, can I address that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Ben, the problem is you are a brilliant guy who is articulate, who believes what you say. You are a genuine person. You are
well, God bless you.
Say that and put that forward. There are not many Ben Steins left in the Republican Party, certainly in positions of leadership, because as we've seen, they will fall for and do anything. They've racked up $9 trillion of debt during the past 4 years. There are not Ben Steins out there left, and we need them.
Well, we do need them. You know what? There's a hymn that begins, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. And let's begin with us. I mean, let's begin with us here in our little teeny group saying our first step is we want to have a school choice. That's our first step. We really mean it. Our second step is we want to not defund, refund the police so that the police have enough men and women and manpower and woman power so that they can protect people on the streets and people don't feel terrified walking to and from their jobs. I mean, we can start with incredibly simple things like that.
Gary, so I agree 100%, Ben. And Gary, what breaks my heart is that you've served this country and you've lost, you have no party. What would bring somebody like Gary Collins, Simple Life Now, what messages from a politician would bring you back into a tent?
Well, I was a fan of Herman Cain. That's who I was backing during the primaries. He had a plan. The problem is any outsider who's rational, who does not toe the party line, they're going to take him out. And they gutted Herman Cain immediately. As soon as he gained a little momentum, they took him out, just like West, how they gerrymandered and got voted West out in was it Florida, right? And it wasn't just the Democrats, it was the Republicans and Democrats did it to him. That's where I get pissed. The only way this is going to change, I 100% agree with Ben. The biggest equalizer of anything you can do for humanity is education. Fair, equal education. The public education system needs to be abolished. It needs to be destroyed. You should be able to choose where you want to go to school from the beginning of a 4-year-old to a PhD, whatever. It's your choice. You get to decide where you go to school. I mean, and then also that term limits. Term limits is one of the most rational solutions to nepotism and cronyism there ever was. But these guys aren't going to vote on that. We have people dying in office of old age. That's insane. They're serving 50 plus years. They're not serving us. They're serving themselves. And then these people need to go to prison for a long time. Not Martha Stewart, Nancy Pelosi, Donald Rumsfeld. These people, Dick Cheney. They need to go away.
What does Rumsfeld deserve to go to prison for? He fired me from my job at the White House long ago, 47 years ago.
That alone.
Is that it?
No, that alone. But no, I mean.
You could say it, Gary. We all have different ideas on this show.
It's just that by being there, these congressmen, these people in power in the deep state, they act just like criminal enterprises. I hate to say it. I'm probably going to be dead tomorrow if I disappear. Just you'll know what happened. But I'm honest. They run criminal enterprises, and they need to be punished for so. How many times have we heard about these congressional hearings where big uproar? You broke this law. You embezzled. You did this. You siphoned in campaign funds. You paid this person off. What? It's all blown up, and then nothing ever happens. Until these people start paying for the crimes, nothing's going to change because they're running through with complete immunity. Nothing ever happens to them.
Hey, Ben, I have a question for you. It's
very sure.
When they fire you from the White House, is that like a normal firing? Like in radio, they bring you in on a Friday and sit you down and let you know. How do they do that at the White House?
Well, I don't remember what day of the week it was, but I was sitting in my teeny tiny office, working for Ray Price, very, very smart, nice guy. And the phone rang, and it was Rumsfeld. And I thought he was surely calling me with some good news because my father and he were close friends. I was a stupid mistake on my part. And he said, do you just get Mr. Rumsfeld? I don't know how he referred to himself. Do you like working here at the White House? Yes, I do. I like it very much. Well, I'm afraid you're not going to be able to do it much longer because you are watching too much of Nixon's farewell address to the White House staff. And when you watch it on your TV in your office, it goes through the whole White House communication system. And other people who turn on their TV in their offices see it too, as depressing them. And so we're going to have to let you go. I said, that comes as kind of hard news, Mr. Rumsfeld. I just within the last few hours bought my first house, used up every cent I had in savings and borrowed some. And he said, well, we'll find you another job in the bureaucracy. We'll find you a really good job in the bureaucracy. And we'll find you like a speechwriter for the Secretary of Transportation or something like that. And the way Washington works is such that my mother and father were very well connected in Washington. And I wish they were as well connected in Hollywood as they had been in Washington. And by the end of the day, I had 3 excellent job offers. One of which was to be an editorial writer and columnist for the Wall Street Journal, which I would have been my own column before I was 30. So I took that one. But the point is, Rumsfeld was not that nice to me, but God bless him, and merciless would be a good word.
And I think, Ben, I think the point that Gary was bringing up was the Iraq War, which many Americans feel like they were lied to. Gary having served this country, and I think that was what he was referring to as far as crimes with Rumsfeld and Cheney and all the people that lied to us.
Well, they didn't. I really don't think Rumsfeld knew he was lying to us, with all due respect. But if you think,
that's why what Rob said about you is the most important thing. You are a good, loving American citizen that has forgiveness. Not that we're not, but you're genuine. You're the real deal.
Well,
like they say in planes, trains, and automobiles. And
can we go back to the fact that I think we broke some news on this show that Ben Stein once got fired for watching too much of Richard Nixon's.
Yes.
I mean, that's you're right. That's one of the only, you're the only person in the world ever that could say they got fired from the White House for watching too much Richard Nixon. I mean, that's like the only, that you win the award. And if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. I want to thank everybody that's listening to us on YouTube, all your comments and everything. You make The World According to Ben Stein go around. And you could also find us on Parler at Ben Stein, and on iTunes and Stitcher and Amazon and all those different places at The World According to Ben Stein. And we're joined tonight by amazing special guests. My mother loves you guys more than she does me. Gary Collins from At the Simple Life, she said it, and Rob Kendall from 93.1 FM in Indiana. I tell everybody to stream the show, and I beg everybody to find Rob's podcast and get his books, because you're extremely at peace. And I just want to give some people some enjoyment for the remainder of the show, that we steer away from politics for a few minutes. Gary wanted to play a game called 6 Degrees of Ben Stein, which I think we already started playing. If you guys are interested that are listening, I'll let you in. You guys could play the game. So Gary, and I know Rob, you also have a lot of questions. So Gary, go for it.
Yep. My first one is, I want to know about how you knew the mother of, my brain just went blank. Ed, help me out. Oh, we were talking about him. I just went blank. Kimball's in the head, but that's not what it is. Mass serial killer.
Oh, Big Ed Kemper.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was teaching at UC Santa Cruz, University of California in Santa Cruz. And that school is divided up into colleges, just like Yale. And I was teaching what was called College 5. And the the head of that college, I forget what his title was a Mr. Hall. His secretary was a very tall, mean woman named Clarnell Strandberg. Her son was a big, incredibly tall, scary looking, hulking guy who turned out to be the mass murderer who had been murdering co-eds who had be picked up hitchhiking and wandering around the town of Santa Cruz. And he's still in prison, I believe. He's quite a guy, a very scary guy. And that's how I knew his mother, who he killed, who wound up killing his mother. God bless him. I shouldn't say God bless him. He was a very bad person.
Did you meet him, Ben, by any chance?
Oh, I met him a number of times.
Oh,
Scary.
wow.
Scary as hell. Scary as hell.
I know. I mean, like a lot of people that have tuned in or listen, have watched that show Mindhunter. There's a true story. Both of you. We were in the desert, staying over in Ben's house of the night, and I'm binging on that show Mindhunter, and I hear Ben's Uggs squeaking, and it just and I knew that I did not get much sleep that night. So now, Gary, because you've met Ben, you have 1 degree of separation between you and Big Ed Kemper. Same with you, Rob. Go ahead.
Edmund Emil Kemper.
Yes.
Ben, I was asked to ask you this by a coworker at WIBC tonight, so I will use this opportunity. How and why did the brilliant conservative mind of Ben Stein end up hiring hyper-liberal Jimmy Kimmel on Win Ben Stein's Money?
He was carrying me. We auditioned only one person to be my co-host. We just auditioned him for about 20 minutes. We said we don't need to see anyone else. He's hilarious. He's brilliant. Everything great about his performance. Yes, he and I are not on the same page about politics by a it's a very long page. We're not on anywhere near each other. But he's been a very good friend to me. I love him a lot. I wish he would become a conservative. I don't think that's likely to happen, but I love him a lot. And I was very, very blessed to have him as my co-host. Our show won 7 Emmys. That's the most Emmys I think Comedy Central has ever won for anything. And I was very, very pleased and grateful that he was my co-host.
I remember watching that show at 13, 14 years old, and I learned so much about this country and about history through that show. You educated more than any social studies teacher. So
well, God bless you, sir. God bless you, sir. You're very kind indeed. Thank you.
Okay, you're up, Gary.
Oh, another one. I was going to say I had a show idea with Dave Chappelle and Ben. I thought that would be a good one. Driving around a car in America. With a lot of people don't know that you came up early on through politics. How did you end up working for Rumsfeld? Was it your dad only? I mean,
no, it was partly that. When I was graduating from law school, I was a hippie, a long hair, a mustache, droopy mustache, wore tie-dyed purple bell bottoms and sandals. I was a hippie, and then I suddenly realized, hey, you're trying to get a job as a lawyer. You can't look like this. You look like a homeless person. And I thought, how am I ever going to get a job? And my wife, God bless her soul, said, well, ask her father. He'll work it out for you. And he did. And so I wound up working part of the time for Mr. Rumsfeld. That was then called the Office of Economic Opportunity. It was Lyndon Johnson's war on poverty that Nixon inherited and was in the process of dismantling. And part of the time I worked for a wonderful man named Robert. I forget his last name. I think it was Smith, amazingly enough, who was in charge of minority affairs and connecting the Nixon White House with African Americans and Hispanic Americans. And he was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man. I worked half the day for him. And it was interesting. The most interesting part of that job was I worked right next to an office for, I believe the man's name was E. Howard Hunt, who was busily planning the Watergate break-in, and no one ever used to see him, but that's what he was doing.
So I want to bring this up though, Ben, because there are people listening, and it's like before you were watching Fox News, and I really do think we need to have more conversations. We've lost all sort of creativity, comedy, culture in this country. There is nothing. And you were around during one of the most tumultuous times everybody likes to say is the worst part of American history, but you were around in an extremely tumultuous time. You had the Vietnam War, you had Nixon, you had impeachment, you had all these different things going on. What was it like going to bed then? What was it like because people are people really are scared to death right now. The Trump supporter, the Trump base, they're terrified right now, Ben, as I'm sure you were in those days.
I wasn't terrified. We were having a great time. We were having an incredibly great, wonderful time.
As Nixon was impeached, you weren't terrified?
Those days were terrible. But when I was out on the streets demonstrating against the war in Vietnam, when I was a student at Yale, we had incredibly, unbelievably great times. Yes, I was terrified when Mr. Nixon was forced out of office, and doubly, triply, quadruply terrified when I lost my job. Luckily, I had parents who would help me. I had many job offers. Actually, the current times I find are more scary because I think there will be, already is a substantial real blacklist against people who were and are Trump supporters, and I think these are scarier times.
Josh Hawley, actually today, Senator Josh Hawley, who is the heir apparent, actually lost his book deal with Simon and Schuster. Just simply because
that's criminal. That stuns me. Was that just announced today?
Yeah, it was today that he lost it because he voted to he didn't want to certify the election. He lost his book deal, and the fact that you see, this is part of the problem is they've pushed people into a corner, and I'm very scared right now of what people are going to do. Because
I couldn't agree more. Because that story is really, really bad. Because during the Nixon era, even at the worst of the Nixon era, we Nixon people were being offered book deals right and left, and it's what you just told me makes my blood run cold.
But you've gone through it.
I have gone through it, but I was a much, much younger man. And I didn't have all the obligations I have now. I didn't have a son to support, and his daughter, and his ex-wife, and his girlfriend. I didn't have all those people to support.
And no, but I meant as far as getting expelled or losing work because of your political.
Yes, I'm deeply concerned about it. I'm extremely concerned about it. I'm very, very concerned about it. You bet.
Rob, I see you wanted to jump in.
Well, I had another question for Ben, so I didn't know if now was a good time or you want
anytime.
Ben, I'm curious on how in the world, because we talked about last time, you're in two of the most iconic movies ever, Ferris Bueller and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. How does a contract negotiation work on one of those things? Like, do you just feel fortunate enough to do it, take whatever they offer? Do they call you and you go back and forth? How does that work?
Well, the agent does all that negotiating. I don't do any of it, but generally I just say, where do you want me to show up at what time, and I'll be there. I mean, the amount of money a person my incredibly modest level gets paid for acting in a movie is so tiny that it's not even worth arguing about.
Well, tell them how much you made for Ferris.
I think it's either $360 or $380, not $1,000, $380.
Oh my!
I know,
goodness.
and believe me, I would do it again for I would pay them cheerfully 1,000 times that.
But your line, Ben, is like the line of the movie.
It's a very famous line for all 1980s movies, and I was incredibly lucky to get the gig, and it's just mind-boggling how lucky I was. I mean, I've been very, very lucky about everything. I'm married to the absolutely nicest, finest, kindest, most beautiful, most loving, most unselfish, forgiving woman in the world. I'd say that goes very, very high on the list.
So I want to get back to this. I want to get each of your perspectives on this. Rob, you're smiling, you're happy, you're home. Gary, you seem very reasonably content. So do you, Ben. And I want you all to share with people that this too shall pass. That this is a moment in time. It's an extremely dark moment in time, and we have a lot of coming up that is going to be very dark and very scary. I want you to share with people tips of getting through this, because people are terrified right now.
One, turn it over to God. Literally get on your knees and pray and say, dear God, thank you for the wonderful life you've given me. Thank you for the fact that there have been some bad news coming out of Washington and on the networks, I will have a good dinner tonight. I will sleep in a warm bed, and tomorrow morning when I get up, I can go swimming. Just January 10th or 8th or whatever day it'll be, I can go swimming. I'm very, very blessed, and I'm especially blessed above everything to be an American. I am every day, hundreds of times a day, I say it to myself, I am blessed to be an American, and I will keep saying that, and it'll get me through.
What about you, Gary?
Yeah, for me, when anything seems like it's going off the rails or bad, there's always great opportunity in those situations. Those are the situations that build character. The way I look at it is, if you focus on the negative and that things are going to go bad, well, they're going to go bad for you. And you can't control it. If there's things outside of your control, and that's why I always say, change what you can change, ignore the rest. I'm taking this opportunity to even build my business more. I'm putting more money into it. I'm trying to get the message out further and further. You need to look at this again as an opportunity. And like Ben said, Ben will like this. My first protective detail was in Mali, Africa. I remember we got back. Yeah, my very first one. And a guy fell up to his neck in a cesspool the very first 15 minutes of the detail. And so when we got back, I remember a group of us said, I'll never complain about my life ever again, ever again. And from that moment forward, I have said, I won the lottery. I'm the luckiest person in the world. I live in the most prosperous, most giving country. I have to take advantage of that. No country's perfect. Trust me, I've been to some pretty bad ones. That's how you have to look at it, and just keep your head up, and it will pass. Like I said, there's opportunity out there. You just got to go find it.
What about you, Rob? Thanks, Gary.
Well, I guess I could just tell you about my day, and this is I try to keep stock of the country in which we live and the world in which I live. I didn't have to be to work until about 7:30. I was on the #1 rated radio station in a major radio market. I was able to be home about 2:30.
Congrats.
My beautiful girlfriend made me a wonderful dinner, and then I got to come hang out with Judah, Gary, and Ben Stein. That's a pretty damn good life.
And I you know what? And I have to agree with you. And to the people that are listening, and to the people in America, that's how you have to find this, right? It's like, that's been, and I think the roughest thing through this past year, as Gary brought up with the statistics of the COVID, for people like Ben and myself, right, who are in the 12-step world, that's been shut down, right? To people that go to church or synagogue, that's been shut down, right? They've opened it a little bit, but to the places people need to go to get solace, all shut down. To watching late night shows that have comedy, all shut down. There is nothing that Americans are missing. And of course, there's God, or a form of spirituality that's been seriously lost. And find somebody, you care about, say to them, you care about them, and try to get through these times, because we are going to go through them, and you're not alone. I think that's the biggest message that people need to hear, is you're not alone. And Ben, somebody in the audience requested that you give them a Bueller.
Bueller.
That's
Bueller,
it. It's
Bueller.
over. I don't have to do anything anymore. My life.
And on that note,
also I want to end with this.
Yes.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. Good night, everybody.
And on that note, I want to thank everybody out there that's been listening on our live stream. Spread the word. The world according to Ben Stein. We are never linear. We're always fun. Somebody compared us to a Hollywood speakeasy, which is the best compliment a person could ever get. I think of Harry Dean Stanton at that moment. I want to thank everybody. Remind everybody to like us on Facebook. You know what? Forget about that. Like us on iTunes at The World According to Ben Stein. Like us on YouTube at The World According to Ben Stein. You could find him. Gary, what's your website?
thesimplelifenow.com.
And I suggest people follow it because just follow Gary. What about you, Rob? How do people find your station and you on Parler?
WIBC.com and at Mock and Rob Show on Parler.
And I want to thank again everybody for listening. And of course, let's thank America's humble servant, Benjamin Jeremy Stein, for singing "We Shall Overcome." And because we shall overcome, and good luck to everybody. God bless you. Stay safe. Private message us if you ever need to talk or just complain. We're all good with that. We are, especially Rob. Private message him. And I want to thank everybody for listening to The World According to Ben Stein. We will see you again on Tuesday night. Stay safe, people. Thank you.
God bless you all.